So ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy the breakfast. Again, thank you for coming along, and please welcome Bruce Wedderburn.
Thank you for that, James. I very much appreciate it. Good morning. I'd like to echo James's comments and say thank you for getting up a little bit earlier to come out and join us for breakfast today. We very much appreciate it. This topic of increasing sales costs is something that we've been studying at Huthwaite for a number of years now in a variety of different industries to try and find out if there's some sort of predictive formula that organisations can use to calculate how much they're spending in order to bring in revenue. So that's what we're going to be really delving and doing a deep dive today, and we're going to have you walking out of this session in an hour's time with an action plan and some specific steps that you can put in place, if you choose, to be able to address that issue in your organisation. Because there are some obvious costs and there are some that are unseen. And it's those unseen costs that can have the most devastating effect on profitability per deal, profitability per client, profitability per organisation if you bubble it all up. So let's take a look at some of those things. We're going to get you involved in conversation along the way. Here's how this is going to work. I'll put a question up on the screen, and what I'll ask you to do is turn to the person next to you to discuss this question. And we do this for a couple of reasons. Number one, it helps mentally for us to stay in the room. We're all very busy. There's 1,000 things that are on our plate right at the moment. The more we can keep you mentally in here and engaged, the more valuable it's going to be for you. Secondly, also, if we have to verbalise something, we have to think through it a little bit more, don't we? So maybe it's an opportunity to think through some of these issues in maybe a little bit more depth than you would normally in a session like this. So again, thanks for being here. Let's get involved straight away, shall we? I want you to think of the question that's on the screen now. Here's our first discussion break, and that is, in your organisation, as you're looking to calculate profitability per deal, maybe think about a specific opportunity, maybe think across the breadth of your client base. And you're going to calculate that profitability. May have a spreadsheet, you may have some form of CRM that you're using to be able to enable you to do that. What are some of the factors that you pay attention to on the cost side of the equation? So, 1 minute, person next to you, please discuss. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for doing that. One of the rules of these discussion breaks is that, number one, there's never going to be enough time, because we want to make sure we get you guys out by 9 o'clock. Number two, because of the size of the group, we probably won't be able to take individual contributions, again with keeping an eye on the clock. But I hope you heard something from your partner at your table that got you thinking about this. Here are some of the costs that we hear about when we work with organisations. Just take a look at that for a moment. Were any of these costs in discussion at your table? Please raise your hand if that was the case. Okay, so most of them. And in fact, if you go out to almost any organisation and you look at the costs that they examine to determine profitability per deal, these are the types of the things that are going to be out there. Why is that? Because these costs are obvious. In fact, going forward for the rest of today, we'll call these the obvious costs. These are the ones, if you stop a CFO in the hallway, these are the things that they're paying attention to. These are the things that they'll give the sales organisation a hard time about when it comes to calculating profitability per deal. So we're going to be looking today at what are those costs that are not in the spreadsheet. What are those costs that are more insidious, that often fly below the radar, that often your salespeople, sales managers, perhaps can be totally unaware of, but nevertheless can just as a devastating impact on profitability as these costs here. We want to find out from you, on average, taking into account those costs, how much do you spend in your organisation to win a significant piece of business, a large piece of business in your company? Think about all those factors you just talked about, you just saw on the screen. What would the cost of that winning that piece of business cost? So I'm going to ask you this quick poll. Raise your hands. Who is 30,000 or below? Okay, a few people in the room. 30 to 50? Okay, a couple of people. 50 to 100. A few hands. 100,000 or more. Okay, so majority of hands going up. We had an easy spread across there, pretty even spread. But interesting, a lot of hands went up for the higher amounts. Where's that trend going? Here's some scary facts that we've done some tracking on this. There are some organisations who are better, not necessarily good, but are better at this than other organisations and other industries. IBM in their Global Services division at the moment spends upwards of $500,000 or just below $500,000 to win a key piece of business. The Big Four accounting firms, if you're going after a large institutional or a government audit, in excess of $1 million. Consulting firms, there's a full range there, but the scary part is not how much it is now, but how much it is going to be in a few years from now, because we're seeing those costs doubling in 5 years, and the costs are estimated to double again in less than 5 years from now. Why is that? Why is that trend? Because that's the scary part. It's not what it's going to cost now, it's what's going to cost us in a few years. Here are some factors. Customer expectations are changing. Are you finding that you're having to do a lot more selling now before you get paid? Sales cycles have extended and increased. From the moment of your first contact right through to the signing of the agreement, they want more proof of concepts, more assessments, more meetings, more presentations, more proposals, a greater sense of certainty and less risk, and all of that extends the sales cycle. All of that costs more from a selling perspective, doesn't it? We're looking at competitive pressures. Anyone here in the room have less competition than you did 6 years ago? Occasionally we see a hand go up, and I think, God bless you, that's great. But in the majority of cases, hands stay down to that question. And it's not just one or two more competitors. In some industries, it's a dozen, and they're coming in from overseas, and they're willing to do a lot of all that upfront work for nothing, because they don't have the same margin pressure that established businesses in this room have. We're also looking, there's less customers to sell to. I mean, with the mergers and acquisitions that are happening. Some industries, you used to have 6 or 7 clients, you're going to have 3. We did this session in Chicago a couple of weeks ago, and a gentleman who's the CEO of one of the largest digital outdoor media companies in the US was talking to us later on, and he talked about this subject and said, we have 9 major players in our space in the US at the moment. Within 12 months, we're going to have 2. So if you're selling into that space, that's going to have a devastating impact if you're not winning those pieces of business. So they're sort of the external costs. We want to put that on the table, that what's happening out there in the business environment, in the economy, is having an impact on our profitability per sale. What's happening with our clients? Your clients are doing things, they're exhibiting certain behaviours that are having an effect on the amount of money you keep at the end of a deal. No doubt about it. But where we're going to focus most of our time today is going to be what's happening inside our organisations. The things that we're aware of, but most importantly, the things that we're probably not aware of. And they're the hidden cost. Here are 3 headlines that we're going to be tracking, and we have been tracking, is that number one, the things that salespeople are doing on a consistent basis are not accurately being reflected in the metrics of the organisation. Secondly, we're seeing this thing called the feel-good sales funnel. We'll talk a bit about that. That the actions taken by senior sales leaders to feel good about where the organisation is going and the forecast and the pipeline are actually damaging the profitability of the organisation, usually unconsciously. And we're seeing that sales cycles are being extended not just by client behaviour, but also by salesperson and sales strategy. Unconsciously taking a client who'd be quite willing to close a piece of business in 6 months, and the salesperson is unconsciously saying, no, we don't want to close it yet. I want to close it in 9 months. So let's talk about, that seems absurd. So let's talk about why that is and how that plays out. The question we want to ask is, how are these costs in your organisation being measured? We looked at the obvious costs before, didn't we? Got those on the spreadsheet. People are paying attention to that. Who's measuring these? And what metrics are you using to measure it? What trends are you seeing? What are you tracking in your organisation? And more companies are starting to say, this is what we've got to pay attention to, in addition to those obvious costs. So let's look at the first one. And I'm going to ask you a question, and this is one we don't have to turn to the person next to you about, because I think it's almost a fairly obvious answer. We're going to look at what salespeople do and what we measure. How do you know if a salesperson is successful? Let me throw that question out to the group. This is the group participation part. How do you know if a salesperson is successful? Excuse me?
They go over budget.
They go over budget in terms of sales, right? And how do we measure sales? We measure it in terms of, it starts with R, revenue, absolutely. So it's not a trick question. How do we know if a salesperson is successful? They reach their revenue targets. They go over budget, perhaps. Absolutely. But let's take a minute to think why just measuring revenue is perhaps an indication, but not the total picture of why a salesperson is successful. Because measuring revenue, whether it's under budget or over budget, is what we call a lagging indicator. It's like we're looking in the rear vision mirror. How did we do last month? Did Sally meet her quota last quarter? It's a backward-looking metric because by the time we can change that metric, by the time we measure it, it's too late to change it. So we've all got in our companies a series of leading indicators, forward-looking metrics, to let us know that yes, we are on track for achieving a certain target in this region, this person, for our whole organization. So the question I want to ask you, and this will be a discussion with the person next to you, is what leading indicators in your organization are you using to measure future sales success? We've got this target we need to hit. How do we know we're on the way to getting there with a sense of confidence? That's the question under discussion. Please take a minute. Here are some of the things that we hear, and we've done this in session after session, organisation after organisation. We've asked this question. Probably about 80% of the answers fall into three different categories, and I'd be curious if the three categories were reflective in the discussion that you had. Typical leading indicators employed by organisation. Number one is pipeline value, the number of dollars we have, excuse me, the number of dollars that we have in our pipeline at any given time, from an organisational perspective, from a team perspective, and from a sales individual advisor or salesperson perspective. And this is not an uncommon thing we hear. I need to have 5 times my quota, or maybe 10 times, 3 times, whatever the number is, but I need to have X times my quota reflected in gross value in my pipeline at any given time. Sound familiar? Here's another one. A number of opportunities in the pipeline. As an organisation, we need to have 123 opportunities in our pipeline. We know that because that has been the benchmark for success. And as an individual advisor or consultant, I know I need to have 5 opportunities in stage 1, 2 opportunities in stage 2, because that's the funnel, that's the pipeline in the organisation. It's time tested, it's proven, it's been handed down to me, and it's almost like, in some companies, it's almost like a religion. If you don't have that, you will not be successful. In other companies, it's sort of a loose guideline. Who had either of these two things that you were talking about in your table group? Okay, most of the hands in the room, exactly. You're not lone rangers there. That's what most organisations will be measuring. Anyone here also mentioned sales activity? Says, okay, quite a few people. Sales activity is another metric. Our salespeople need to have a certain number of meetings and calls per week. We don't want them sitting around the office. They need to be out there, because when the going gets tough, the tough get busy. So let's take those 3 metrics and I'll give a little exercise here. 3 commonly held metrics. We've got 2 salespeople on the screen. Now, for the sake of the exercise, they are both working for the same company. They're selling the same product. They're calling on the same clients. Everything is identical. They've got the same territory, with the exception of the information that you see on the screen. And the question I'd like you to discuss with your partner and trying to reach an agreement with your partner, who's going to reach quota? Who's more likely to reach quota based on the information that you see? These were the 3 metrics we talked about. Value of dollars in the pipeline, number of opportunities in the pipeline, and activity level. See, 1 minute with a partner. Please try and decide who is your choice. Okay, thank you. How do we do? All the fans of Sally. Sally's going to reach quota. Now, everyone has to put your hand up. You can't, come on, everyone, I'm not committing to that. I'm not going to, it's a setup. I'm not doing it. You've got to put your hand up. How many? There's 2 options at the moment. At the moment, there's 2, but you're a little ahead of me. Okay, who said Sally? Okay, why Sally? Why not Catherine? Why Sally? She looks nicer. Yes, that's important. That's important. Based on the information. I guess how she looks is information, yes. She's up there. Why Sally?
She has more time to do a good job.
So she's not as busy. She has more time to do a good job, okay? And we hear this sometimes. Obviously, she's more focused and planned and prepared for her client meetings. Obviously, she has the time. No, the Catherine fans are saying no way. So who said Catherine? Who would like to volunteer why they vote for Catherine on this? Who would not like to volunteer, is willing to do so anyway? Yes?
She's obviously in the traffic.
She's in the traffic.
Yeah, she's going to get hit by a deal if she stands there. She's seeing so many customers. She's seeing so many customers that sooner or later she's not even going to have to open her mouth. Where somebody says, oh, I'm glad you're here, here's one.
And you've built your organisation on that strategy. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here.
But a lot of organisations are built on that strategy.
Yeah, that's right. She's in the traffic. I know, we might put them in one of our new books. Traffic selling. Stand in the middle of the road and you get by a deal once in a while. Yeah, I heard a joke. It was like, salesperson went back to the office and said, wow, I saw 23 customers today. And I would have seen more, except one of them asked me what I was selling. So, I think there is a third option here. I'm pressing the wrong button to get it. There it is. The third option is we don't know. Right? And that's what you were That's why you were probably thinking, well, I don't know, we need more information. So if you are managing these people and you need more information, what typically happens in most organisations, I'm sure it doesn't happen with any of the companies represented here, but other organisations out there, who are the foot soldiers who have to go out and get that information? Who is that? Sales managers. So they send a team of sales managers out and the call goes something like this. Hello, Sally. Yeah, it's Bob. I noticed that I'm looking at the forecast, ABC has gone down $7,000 this month. Just what's going on there? What happened? Did you get that meeting with Diane? Oh, it didn't happen. Okay. Line by line by line, month by month by month. Does that happen anywhere in your organisations? Yeah. So a question we want to ask is, what's the cost of that? Is that the most efficient use of your resources? Do you have sales managers who are highly skilled at coaching and developing people who need to be out doing that? Instead, they're spending their time staring at spreadsheets, trying to figure out answers to these questions, because the 3 most commonly held leading indicators used by organizations lead to the ineffective use of sales managers and increasing the cost overall within your business. Because quantitative metrics, that's what those are. They're quantitative. How much, when. And quantitative metrics, they're easily understood, they're easily measured. And here's the big thing for each and every one in this room, they're very comforting for us because we feel like we're taking action. It's under control. We can look at that and say, it's there or it's not there, we know what to do. And this is where it leads to this. I don't know if you may or not use a funnel as a visual representation of your pipeline or not, but you're very familiar with the concept of it. Here's what we call the feel-good sales funnel. Here is the popular thinking that, and I've got a 5-stage pipeline process. It doesn't matter if it's 3 stages or it's 300 stages, but I've just picked 5 for the sake of simplicity. And the idea was we're going to put more opportunities at stage 1 because that's where we need to have most of our activity. We know that if we put more here, we're going to get more there, right? That's the philosophy. And our position at Huthwaite is, and where we're seeing success with our client organisations, where we've seen success this year internally ourselves, is by changing the shape of the feel-good funnel to a realistic funnel, which should look something more like this. The output's the same, but what we don't have is all this noise. Because I will guarantee you that, I won't guarantee you, I will highly estimate that if you go back and look at your sales funnel per rep, per region, per however you want to do it, that you've got deals here, here, here that should never be in that funnel because you're using quantitative measures but not qualitative measures. What's the quality of the deals in this pipeline? What's the health of the deals? Should they even be in there at all? And if they are, this is at stage 4. Sally, you've forecasted it at stage 4. Why do you think it is there? Well, because I think it is. I looked at our CRM. It's got a couple of guidelines. I think it meets those guidelines, and so I'm going to put it at stage 4. That's interesting, Sally, because when we put something at stage 4, our CRM does the multiplier. That goes into the forecast at 70%. That gets rolled up amongst our divisional forecast. I send that upstairs. I get a call from the managing director of sales saying, hey, Bruce, I notice your forecast has gone up by 15,000. You feel comfortable about that? What do I say? Yep, feel comfortable about that this month. Okay. So how can we do a better job of getting, it's not the number of deals in the forecast, it's the number of deals that have a likelihood to close. That's what we need to be focusing our time and attention on. And if organizations can make that strategic shift, that is and by applying qualitative metrics to balance out the quantitative metrics, then we're seeing a much more accurate use of resources. Having a direct sales force is a very expensive way to go to market. So what is the cost in terms of management coaching hours, in terms of personnel, in terms of lost opportunity, in terms of travel, in terms of all those obvious costs we looked at before? What's the cost associated with these deals that shouldn't be in the pipeline or certainly shouldn't be at the stage that they're forecasted at? So let's take a look at what are some of those qualitative costs that we can use to balance out the quantitative. And I'll go back to, when looking at the qualitative costs, the research base that James talked about earlier. Huthwaite has conducted the most extensive research ever been done into sales performance. Everything you see that's about to come up now is based on the findings of what the best organisations, the best salespeople, and the best sales teams and managers do on the best days on a consistent basis. So number one, and we call these the silent killers. And I mention silent killer because if you go, that's a very emotional term, but if you go and Google that term, you will see things come up like heart disease, ovarian cancer, electric power lines, carbon monoxide poisoning. And the common theme with all of those is they're insidious. We don't notice them until an event happens. And so these 5 silent killers we're going to be looking at are qualitative metrics that are often not measured. It's coming. Thank you, though. There you go. That are not measured in organisations. Here's number 1. Sales strategies, sales tactics, sales calls that are misaligned, are not aligned with where the customer is in their decision-making process. Huthwaite, along the way, James talked about the initial research we did, was observing and documenting 35,000 individual client interactions in 24 countries around the world, 26 different industries, to identify what separates the excellent from the average sales performer, sales teams. Along the way, we had the chance to observe over 35,000 instances of buyer behaviour, to draw a predictive model of buyer behaviour. Now, every one of your clients, every one of your prospects at the moment goes through this decision-making process that you see on the screen. They are, even the clients that you're not talking to, that you want to talk to, they're already in the buying cycle somewhere. So I'll quickly go through this. For those of you who are experienced in sales, it looks like most of the people in the room are. This is something you probably could have figured out on your own. I don't think you need a 40-year, 35-year research project to do it. But there are a couple of nuances to it that are not immediately obvious that I want to bring your attention to. Clients who are in a recognition of needs phase are asking themselves, do we have a problem? Do we have an opportunity? How severe is the problem? Is the cost of solving the problem, does it outweigh the problem? Clients who are in evaluation of options are evaluating choices to solve that problem or to realize an opportunity. And they're forming decision criteria. Actually, we lost the lights there. Somebody lean against it. And they're forming decision criteria and are weighing the alternatives against those criteria. Clients who are in resolution of concerns have made a tentative choice, but they are now evaluating risk and uncertainty, which is bubbling back to the surface. Clients who are in implementation are implementing the solution, and they are now saying, does the value we're getting from the solution map to what I was promised, map to our vision for that solution? And clients who are in changes over time don't perceive that they've got any problems, any needs, any challenges at all. So the important thing about this is that what questions clients will ask themselves, what they'll focus on, and the value that they will receive from the interaction with your salespeople will vary depending on where they are in their decision-making process at any given time. So therefore, the selling behaviours that create that value also need to change. And where we see misalignment with the customer is where we see that sales strategies and processes that are out of sync. If a salesperson is going in and the strategy is, I'm going to present my organisation, what we can do to help that company, but a client is in changes over time or recognition of needs, that is a presentation that's going nowhere. So the question we need to be asking when looking at a spreadsheet and looking at the pipeline is the sales strategy being used by the seller in line with where the customer is in their buying cycle? Does the salesperson know where the customer is? Are they able to move the customer around that buying cycle? And are they able to execute the specific skills for that specific phase in the buying cycle? Most people are using more of a generic approach. They'll sell the same way throughout, asking the same questions, the same presentations, making the same features and benefits without any real thought to where the customer may be in their decision-making process. That is one of those unseen costs. That is one of the major reasons deals get forecast in February or March, gets pushed back to April, May, June, and then disappears in September. Deals get stalled in the pipeline because we're out of alignment with the customer. Let's look at silent killer number 2. The concept of needs from weak to strong. So people are worried about the AV, I turned that off. People who are flying, everyone here flies, and I don't mean flap your arms, I mean a plane. You fly. Now just imagine you're sitting in a plane and it's taxiing out to the runway. And the flight attendant is in the aisle and is doing the safety demonstration. What do most people, not you of course, other people, what do most people do when the flight attendant's doing the safety demonstration? What are they doing? Read the paper, exactly. What else? Sleep. Right? Look out the window, talk to the person next to them, file their nails. Do anything but look at the safety demonstration. But just imagine you're on the flight, the plane takes off and it's circling around Sydney Airport. About 15 minutes, as a matter of fact, is circling round and around. It's kind of get a little worried about this. And then the pilot gets on the PA and says, ladies and gentlemen, you might have noticed that we've been circling around the airport. Just want to let you know that we have a warning light that's come on the dashboard here that says our landing gear is locked in the up position and may not come down. So we're going to have to go back to Sydney Airport. We're going to make an emergency landing. And as he's saying this, you've got a window seat, you look out down, and you can see the airport down below, there's Botany Bay, there's the runway, and there's about 100 flashing red lights of the fire engines and the ambulances that are awaiting your arrival. Then he gets on and says, well, in order to prepare for the emergency landing, we're going to repeat the safety demonstration. Let me ask you, now who's paying attention to the safety demonstration? But what's the difference? It's the exact same solution, exact same presentation that everyone ignored just 5 minutes ago. The difference is now there's a screaming need in our mind for that information. Now, I hope you're never in that sort of situation. We shouldn't even joke about it in a way, but it's an exaggerated point we want to make, that so many times one of the silent killers we see is that presentations, solutions are offered to customers, just like a safety demonstration is offered 99.9% of the time, to people who have no real desire or need for the information in that presentation. Because needs vary from weak to strong. Yes, it's almost perfect. It's a problem in our organisation, I can live with it, or it's a problem and I've got 5 other priorities at the moment that are more important than that. But come back and see me next 6 months. Really like the cappuccino, thank you. Or it's a bigger problem than I realised. But then the client in their mind makes a strategic shift, and at a critically important one. I want to take action to solve it. I'm looking at a solution. I'm thinking about solving the problem or realising the opportunity. A solution presented there has low impact. A solution presented there has high impact. My question is, where in the spectrum of client needs are your salespeople delivering your solutions? Because that will have a major impact on whether the numbers that you're seeing and the leading indicators you're paying attention to are in fact real numbers. In fact, this is important enough, and if you've read the book Spin Selling, it goes into this research in a little bit more detail. In fact, a lot of detail. We actually give them some names. We call these needs implied needs. Implied needs are statements of dissatisfaction, problems, issues, challenges, or an explicit need. And that's where a client is saying, I'm thinking about a solution. I'm describing a solution. I see value in a solution. I'm ready to hear your presentation now. I will see value in learning about and seeing your slideshow now. Before then, you are going to be seen as just another organisation who's coming in and pitching their wares. Now, sometimes people say, yeah, but Bruce, like a need is a need. Come on, let's not get too academic about it. In fact, I'd be happy if my salespeople got any needs. We did a research, and this was in professional services, 1,400 organisations, 1,400 individual meetings, and we wanted to see, is there any correlation between this and successful meeting outcomes? Successful meeting outcome is the client takes action at the end of the meeting that's going to move the opportunity forward. And we found that in successful meetings, there were an average of 4.2 implied needs stated by the customer, and in unsuccessful, there were an average of 3.9. So what conclusion can we draw from those numbers? Certainly not significant. There's a difference, but statistically, it's not a significant difference. Now, what about explicit needs? We saw in explicit needs, in successful meetings, there were an average of 2.7. In unsuccessful, an average of 1.3. What conclusion can we draw from that? Explicit needs are the key. So, when looking at planning sales strategies, the question we want to find out is, how many explicit needs is my team getting? And we're going to give you a checklist at the end with these 5 silent killers there and some very specific questions we highly encourage you to be asking for every line in your forecast, every line in your pipeline. Yep.
What's your definition of successful meeting? Is that a proposal is issued or a meeting moved to the next stage?
It's interesting. A proposal is issued. Who's doing all the work? If the client says at the end of a meeting, give me a proposal, who does all the work there? Salesperson, exactly. So we wouldn't qualify that as a successful meeting. A successful meeting is the customer's taking some action. And we're going to talk a bit about that in a moment, go into details. Thank you for that. Let's look at silent killer number 3. Who are your people talking to? I did quite a bit of work with a large global software organisation throughout Asia. And we'd say in over 50% of the cases in the initial diagnosis, and our team went in and did a series of strategic opportunity planning sessions around major accounts. We found deals were being internally advanced, talked about, discussed, strategizing, pulling everybody together, resources, proposals, on conversations that were being had with the lower level people in the information IT section of the organisation. So who are people talking to? We see in every major sale there are 3 types of focus. There's a focus, or foci, I guess is the correct correct term. That sort of sounds weird to me. So there's three types of focus, three roles in every opportunity. This is not necessarily associated with with an organizational chart. People in different parts of the organization can fulfill different roles. One is, in every opportunity, there's a focus of receptivity. That is someone who, as you'll see in the red, who may be very helpful for you. A focus of receptivity can also say things like this. And how many times that you've had a salesperson come back, or heard about in other organizations, a salesperson come back and go, oh no, even though it's the learning and development manager, he told me that he has the ear of the general manager, and the general manager will just rubber stamp his approvals. All right, got one, sell it, pull together, let's go whole hog to win this opportunity, and we wonder why it doesn't go anywhere at the end. We had a great one at we're Huthwaite, we're an organisation, a large global electrical organisation came to us and wanted to, they were sourcing us and a couple of other consulting firms to work with over 1,000 of their salespeople globally. And they've got this big RFP, they want to ask 1,000 questions, you've seen them, you know, and then we were going to pull everyone together for like a month to work on it. But then I asked a couple of questions early on. I said, you know, what's the mandate for this solution in the organisation? Well, there isn't any, but in case there is one, we want to be prepared. So we said, thank you very much. God bless our competitors. They probably went out there and tore up their organisation to complete this RFP, incurred all sorts of costs, pulled people off other jobs for something which was going nowhere, specifically because the conversation was being had at a focus of receptivity level. Focus of dissatisfaction is the second area. That's the person who owns the problem or will own the upside of the opportunity. And you'll see on the red, the focus of dissatisfaction is the people we need to be having those needs-based conversations with. I think there's some people in the room here who are spin selling graduates. This is where a spin conversation is really valuable to these types of people. But a focus of dissatisfaction could also say something like this. So our question is, going back to Silent Killer 2, how do we have the ability to raise that from number 5 in the list to number 1? How can we do that during the selling process to help the customer see the urgency and the severity of the problems and issues that he has? Focus of power is the third area. That's the person, if you like, the economic buyer, who can release the funds. And if we get a chance to meet with a focus of power, this might be something that we hear, which is great. They also say things like this. So how effectively are your teams, who are they meeting with? Had they conversations with the focus of dissatisfaction and the focus of power, different conversations at different times? Are they leveraging the different buyer roles? We're going to have that as one of your checklist questions. Let's look at silent killer number 4. And this goes back to what is a successful meeting outcome. If someone comes to your door, if a child comes to the door and they're selling, I know in the US we have Girl Scout cookies, right? They knock on the door, they're selling Girl Scout cookies, you may have something here. Or you go into a retail store. There's really much, the meeting outcome is one of 2 outcomes, isn't it? We either buy or we don't buy, because it's a very simple sale. We're the decision maker, it's a relatively low cost. But is that the type of sale that you're involved in? Usually not. It's a more complex, a major, maybe a more intricate sale, multiple decision makers. So in that situation, there are 2 other outcomes at the end of a client meeting that we need to be very aware of. Number 1, we call an advance. An advance is at the end of the meeting, the client agrees to take some action that's going to take both of you in a positive direction towards a sale. Now, the other one to be aware of is what we call a continuation. And this is the quicksand of selling. Continuations are just like, send me a proposal. Continuations are things that the customer may say, but they're not actually willing to agree to do anything themselves. They're not taking any real action. And continuations can sound really, really appealing. So if a client, you give a presentation to a large group, you're pitching your solution, and the client, and they take you outside in the hallway afterwards and they say, you know what, that was terrific. You really, really understand our issues. We were deeply impressed by what you've got to offer. You are the best out of all the companies we've seen. We're going to talk internally and we'll let you know. We've got a really sexy sounding continuation there. Now, most continuations don't sound that good. So, in the checklist we're going to look at, we'll ask you to apply to your pipelines is how often are your people getting continuations? And more importantly, are they planning for them ahead of time? We can make available for you, and we can, if you want to, just let the Huthwaite people know on the way out. Do you want a copy of our Huthwaite call plan? And it's actually, you've got one in your packets. Don't need to pull them out now, but on the way out you can look at them. Trust me, they're there. The call plan. And the call plan, the important thing we ask, even if you don't do the rest of it, every meeting your people go on is, what advance are you planning to achieve? What's your primary advance? What's your backup advance? Just that one thing alone. That is, what action do you want the customer to take, and can you apply a smart formula to it? Let's look at silent killer number 5, and that is a late stage focus for managers. This one really applies to sales management. In that, we did this study, it was originally done with IBM. We also validated it as IBM software. We also validated it with a services organization in South America to see if this crosses cultures, to see if this crosses industries. It does. This is the statistics from the original study that we did. We wanted to find out, is there any correlation to where managers focus their time in the length of the sales cycle and the actual length of the sales cycle? And we have two outcomes of the study of the two different groups that we had. An average of group 1 was 7.2 calls or meetings to close the sale. The average in group 2 was 5.9 meetings. And what was the difference between where managers focused their time? When managers were actively involved in the deal from the first, second, or third appointment, the deal accelerated considerably. Now, when we see the majority of managers will get involved in a deal a little bit later and be asking questions like, well, when is this going to close? How much is it worth? How many people? What divisions? Can I put you down for 40,000 for October? Do you think we'll get the rest of it in February? If the managers are asking these types of questions, they're taking a late stage focus and adding very little value, if any value, to the likelihood of closing that sale, number 1, and the likelihood of closing it in an accelerated time period. So the checklist we ask you to take away for you, and we can, if you're interested, we can send this to you via email as well. Number 1, go, and I highly encourage you to do this afternoon. If you can find the time, it will be time very well spent. How are your sales strategies? Go line by line in that pipeline. Are your sales strategies for this particular opportunity, are they aligned with where the customer is in their decision cycle? And Mr. Salesperson, how do you know? Have you heard strong, explicit needs from the customer? What are they? Give me some examples of that. And listen, are they explicit needs or are they implied needs? Are they strong, explicit needs? Because technically, hearing something like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'd be interested in taking a look at what you've got to offer. Yeah, that would be of some value, I suppose. Technically, that is an explicit need, but it's certainly not one that we want to get too excited about. Have you identified and are selling appropriately to the right buying role? Who are they talking to about what issues? What types of conversations? Are they dealing mainly with the lower levels, or have they had the ability to move up the client's value chain and have strategic level discussions with buyers who can release the funds for a large-scale purchase that they're forecasting? Are your advances moving the opportunity forward? Are they achieving advances? Ask, what was the last advance you received in this opportunity? And listen, is it an advance or was it a continuation? And what's your next meeting? What's the advance you've got planned for that? What do you mean? Well, what action do you want the customer to take as a result of that? I'd like them to show up. I'd like them to drink the coffee I'm going to buy them. And I jest, but it's amazing how many times people haven't thought through this type of thing. And the last, has your manager been focusing on the early stages? What has been the focus? Are they focusing mainly on when is this going to close? How much is it worth? What do we need to do to get this over the line? Type questions. Or is it more, you've got an appointment coming up with ABC company, let's strategize and plan this together so we can help this client understand the full scope and severity of their needs. Is that the type of questions that sales managers are asking? We wrote a book called Managing Major Sales, which looks at the research that Hathaway did around effective sales management versus ineffective sales management. And one of the key components is when a manager is getting involved in the life cycle. Now, I think one of the things that we highly encourage you to go back, take that checklist. We can get something out to you today or tomorrow that will help you to do that. We're going to have some question time in a couple of minutes, but here's something to think about. You're going to go back this afternoon, hopefully, if you can do this, and do this retroactively. But where it would be more effective to ask those types of questions, it would be proactive, wouldn't it? So you're not having to go back after the fact. But before a deal gets put into the pipeline, before you start allocating resources and costs to it, before you say to that, if a salesperson gets on a plane to Brisbane and stays overnight and incurs those travel costs, wouldn't it be good, and not just one, maybe you're sending a team of advisors, wouldn't it be good to know ahead of time, and they know ahead of time, that this is something that's worth the investment? Those qualitative measures we talked about, balanced with the quantitative measures, will give them that key. And what companies are doing is putting it into their pipelines, into their actual sales or client engagement management process. And it doesn't matter if this is done through a CRM, it doesn't matter if this is done on a spreadsheet or if this is done on a piece of paper, but everyone in this room has, in their organization, you have some form of sales process, true? So how are you integrating and addressing the silent killers proactively in your sales process? If you look at most companies' sales processes, and I've got to put an example up here, there's a number of stages. Again, we've made it a state. This is a 6 stage, it could be 2, it could be 10, the number of stages doesn't matter. But it's the activities in each stage which lets an advisor know, yes, that's a stage 2. Yes, that's a stage 3. There's specific activities there. Here are examples from companies that we've actually, with their permission, taken pipeline stages or milestones from. What do you see is common about those milestones at each stage? What's common about those?
Doing it all yourself.
Excuse me?
You're doing it all yourself.
You're doing it all yourself. How do you mean?
There's no customer buy-in.
Yeah. Thank you. Who's missing from this? The client. And yet if we go to most organizations and look at the milestones at each stage of their pipeline, they're things that the salesperson, they're hoops that the salesperson or selling organization needs to jump through, are predominantly there. But what's missing is the client factor. If you've got to go on that big important meeting in Brisbane tomorrow, it's highly likely that you're going to buy a plane ticket, you're going to drive to the airport, you're going to park your car, you're going to catch the flight, you're going to get a taxi to the client, you maybe have a cup of coffee ahead of time if you're early. All of those things are important, but none of them give you any indication of whether this sale is going anywhere or it's going to close. And yet, how many pipelines are constructed with the sales equivalent of that example? All the things that we as a selling organization need to do. Here is an alternative. I'm not putting this up as the perfect pipeline. I'm not putting this up as the best that can be. It's just an example. We'll just take the first 3 stages. So somewhere in the pipeline process, do we know, we want to know very early on, do we have access to a focus of dissatisfaction? Because if we don't have that and we're continuing to sell to a focus of receptivity all the way down, that's a deal that's at risk. Is the manager involved early? Do we know where the client is in the buying cycle? If we don't know that and we can test our hypothesis with that, That shouldn't be anything past stage 1 or 2. Do we have any explicit needs? Not what we think the explicit needs are. Has the client articulated them to us? Has the client shared how this and who is going to be making the decision at what stage? Has the client shared how they're going to, the decision criteria? These are critical qualitative things that are focused on what the client needs to do that can be worked into the pipeline. We're doing this with quite a few organisations now and helping them steer there. Number 1 is getting it into the pipeline. Number 2 is, do people have the ability to execute? Do they have the skills to execute each one of those different phases? Can they check that milestone with confidence because they know what to do when they're face-to-face under pressure with the client? The potential upside of this, as you calculate, if we had an envelope in your kits, if we did, I'd ask you to pull it out. We don't have one, but if we did, I'd ask you to pull it out, turn it over, and we'll do some back-of-the-envelope maths. And that would be, if we could address some of these silent killers, they are in your organisation at the moment. They are to some degree in every organisation. But if we could address those, what might be the upside per deal, per advisor, per region, per client, per state, and ultimately per organisation? I was doing a presentation I was speaking at a convention in Houston few weeks ago for a property and casualty insurance group. And the speaker after me, who was with one of the large P&C insurance companies, put up this question, and with his permission I asked, can I use this? Because I thought it was fascinating, because I think it's a terrific metaphor for what we're talking about today. He asked the question, and we won't ask you to do it, this is an American example, but he asks, what destroys more homes in the US? Somebody at the back of the room called out rednecks. Somebody called out divorcees. None of those, no. He only had 4 choices. Well, it was actually a trick question, because there is something that destroys more homes in the US every year than all 4 of these put together. It's termites. And yet what's fascinating for that audience, and these were mainly insurance people in the audience who should know this, 2/3 of the people didn't even realise it. Less than 20% considered even that it was a threat. But US residents spend over $5 billion to fix these problems. And 58, almost 60% of people, not aware of it, they've taken 0 action to address it. So why I thought this was a great metaphor for us is like termites eating away unseen at the foundation of a house. Those unseen sales costs are eating away at the profitability of your deals that your people are working on at the moment. I urge you to go back this afternoon, take action, get your managers in the room, pull out that checklist, and let's go through what will be a time-consuming exercise, but a very rewarding one, of saying line by line, let's address this feel-good funnel and find out, do we have opportunities that really should be in there? That's enough for my presentation today. I want to say thank you for your attention. We do have some time. We have about 10 minutes for about 8 minutes, because I know James wants to do a raffle for Q&A. So as you think about anything we've talked about today, a question that you might have, now's the time to raise that. Who has the first question? Yes, please.
Just obviously on the metric side, so we talked about, obviously getting to better quality.
I'll repeat the question too, by the way, in case you're having trouble hearing. Go ahead.
As far as the actual metrics or the measures around behaviours, like we talked about obviously quantitative measures, and you've talked about getting into focusing on qualitative. Can you give an example of the more qualitative measure that someone's used to effectively get that change in behaviour, where they are focusing more on the quality of the incoming?
Absolutely. What's an example of a qualitative measure that organisations are used? We see there's 2 that companies will gravitate towards, and we highly encourage this. One is the degree of advances versus continuations. So for the next month, for example, track for every sales call, every client meeting your advisors go on, at the end of that meeting, track, was it a continuation or was it an advance, and get a ratio. And then do it 6 months later and see if there's been some improvement. Take some form of intervention, whether it involves us, it doesn't involve us, but some form of intervention to improve the degree of advances to continuations. Another one is implied explicit needs. In a meeting, how many implied needs are we getting versus how many explicit needs?
Who's measuring that? Sorry, as far as the actual measure.
Yeah.
Getting the sales managers to measure that.
So yeah, and it varies for who's measuring, who takes those sort of measures, and it will vary from organisation to organisation. I'll give you some examples. We've seen sales managers do it. If a mandate is given by the managing director or the state director, then over the next 2 weeks, maybe, every call, and it goes down to the salespeople, and sales managers are on to the salespeople. We see that as that can be an effective way of doing it. Sometimes organisations put it on the salespeople. They put a special field in the CRM. You can do this in Salesforce.com or any of the others that are out there. You know, what's the advance? What's your next advance? What's your last advance? But the trouble is with CRMs, most salespeople don't fill them out. So you're better off having your managers chasing it. And it can be chasing, but it is the ultimate. The reward will be worth it. You're getting to chase on qualitative measures versus, you know, I've got you down for 50,000 in October. Does that look good? Yeah, it looks good. Okay, great. That's the type of conversation that happens too often. I'm exaggerating, but it's that type of conversation. Who has the second question? All right, we'll skip the second. Anyone have a third? Yes, please.
You mentioned how the sales cycle can become a lot longer.
Yeah.
Can you just cover again why that's the case? Is it more around this misalignment of the sales cycle?
Yeah, sales cycles we're tracking in almost every solution, every large solution sale type of industry are starting to extend. And are continuing to do so. And there are three factors for that. That's what's happening in the macro, in the economy. But that's the less of the three. It's what decisions clients are making. We talked a bit about earlier, some of the hesitancy they're having in moving forward, some of the more proof of concept that they're demanding before they make a decision. But a lot of it is happening because of reacting to that sort of thing from the sales organisations, that the effectiveness of how they're engaging at strategic moments in the life cycle of the sale, moments are not being captured, things are not being picked up on, certain conversations with certain people are not happening, and you add all that up and you get something, a sale which should take 6 months, takes 9 months, and that's if you win it. And if you don't win it, a 9-month sales cycle is a lot more expensive than 6 months. The cost of losing, and we see this really skyrocketing in, say, professional services, but we see this in all organisations. The cost of losing now is outweighing the cost of winning and is accelerating faster than the cost of winning a business. So, final question?
Bruce?
Yes, please.
Just thinking about the roles that we buy a seller.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the goal of every solution seller. I mean, we all have this thing called, I want to be your trusted advisor. I want to be in the inner circle. I want to be, you know, the person you call, even if it's not about what we sell. These are the sort of things that everyone in a long-term sale, you know, that we aspire to. But so many times we see very experienced salespeople falling into the trap of doing those things which help the customer reach the conclusion, the opposite conclusion. The salespeople do things unconsciously that communicate to the customer, I'm just here to compete on price. Please price shop what I'm trying to sell you. I've got a product to sell you, and while I'm sort of listening to your needs, I'm not really. These are the unconscious messages that salespeople are often, not everyone of course, that can be sending. So how can we align that to those certain skills and behaviours that are going to move that towards that inner circle? Because it's all about, it's not what we say we want to be. So many organisations say, if you look up, go to their website and you look up the word value. It's on their website somewhere. Every organisation, you've got it, we've probably got it. Value appears everywhere. Clients are saying, we don't want the lowest price, we want the best what? Value. Salespeople often say, I'm here to give you the value that you're looking for. But value is something which is determined by the customer based on certain conclusions. Are you a trusted advisor? Are your people value-creating salespeople? That's their conclusions the customer arrives at based on certain behaviours that our people demonstrate consistently over time. We can't come in with a T-shirt saying, I'm here to be your trusted advisor. Customers see that and they think, I'm here to sell you a lot of stuff and try and get as much money as possible. So are we exhibiting those consultative behaviours, and are we doing it consistently over time? And what we're talking about today is, are we tracking that? How are we tracking those things as part of our process so it becomes woven into the fabric of our organisation? I'd like to say thank you very much for your time and attention. Don't go yet because James is coming back up. He's got a raffle. He likes to give us some goodies to give away. If you could also please complete your evaluation form, that would be helpful. Thank you very much for your participation, your questions, your interest. I hope this was insightful for you and gave you something to think about. But have a great day, everybody. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, Bruce.